Welcome, class. I'm Professor Wilson, and this is the first lecture video in a series designed specifically for our class, Music 250, 0301, and 0302. Let me first suggest that you get the Aldwell Schachter text in front of you. We'll be needing it briefly today. And the Burckhardt Anthology. All right, the first order of business is to talk about leading tone seventh chords. That's unit 23 in Aldwell Schachter. That's on page 412 in the text. So the topic is leading tone seventh chords. Now the leading tone chord, let's do this in C minor. Of course, is a structure that you know, looks like so. And to make it a leading tone seventh chord, we're going to add one more pitch to the top. Let me remind you, you have to write in the leading tone as an accidental. This same chord could be used in major, but if it were in major, imagine no key signature here, just all naturals. You don't have to write in the B natural, but you must remember to write in the lowered seventh in the chord to make it a fully diminished chord. All right, don't forget that. So all we're doing is taking the 7 diminished chord and adding a diminished seventh to it. This adds a little extra dissonance, and we're only adding a minor third above it. So you can see that the interval content is nothing but a stack of minor thirds. Those are all minor thirds. So it divides the octave up symmetrically, and that produces some very interesting properties, which we'll explore shortly. But to begin with, let's talk about the resolution of the important dissonances in this harmony. As you can see, it pulls, just as the leading tone chord does, it pulls to the tonic, like so. And the outer voices in this particular configuration are the most important dissonances to resolve. Let's look at the other pitches. Okay, so the root of the leading tone seventh chord wants to pull to the root of the tonic, right? And the next pitch up, the third, is ambivalent in its resolution. It could move up or down, like so. All right. And the fifth, in this case an F, its tendency is down. Occasionally, it might resolve up by step. All these resolutions are by step. The voice leading is by step. You can see that the 7 diminished seventh chord interlaces with the pitches of the tonic chord. They're all related by step. Can you see that? You see that? Stepwise relations, all. So the pitches of the 7 diminished seventh chord surround and engulf the pitches of the tonic chord. So the stepwise connections are extremely important to respect and understand. And then the seventh, that's an A flat, or in C minor, key signature, resolves down. That's a very strong resolution. Now, this is an overview of the resolutions. By all means, you must read the chapter, the unit on the subject, unit 23 from Aldwell Schachter. And the text gives lots of examples of how we resolve this harmony in different inversions. And I want you to read them and look at the examples. However, if you keep this in mind, you'll not go wrong in terms of the voice leading and resolution of this harmony. Okay, very good. Now, you can see that it's closely related to the tonic. Again, we're thinking in C minor. We could just as well look at C major, but it's more at home, you can see, in minor because it has the lowered 6th scale degree in it, A flat, which is part of the minor mode. So if we look at this harmony, 7 diminished 7, and compare it to the dominant, you can see how similar it is. Lots of common pitches, right? In fact, let's put the root of the chord just up there, that's enough. You can see all you need to do is take that top pitch, move it down by a semitone to get the dominant seventh in this case. So maybe 6/5. Let's hear how these things sound when resolved. So. see it does fit better in because the chord 6 scalar degree. If you lower the A flat in this case, the 7th of the chord, so you can convert it into the dominant. And quite often these chords are elided into one unit, moving back and forth. In that case, you're probably going to call it a dominant, and the A flat is just going to be an upper neighbor. Context will tell you that. All right. Now, let's look at the phenomena of hidden or direct fifths as they pertain to this harmony. This is something you need to watch out for. Let's shift to G minor just for variety's sake. So what would the 7, diminished 7 in G minor look like? We'll put that F sharp in the bass. Leading tone must be written in as an accidental, you know that. We'll just arrange it this way, like so. That's an E flat. Stack them up. F sharp, A above that, C above that, a minor third above that, E flat. All right. Now, you would think if everything moves by steps, you might resolve it like this. Makes sense? That seems to conform to all the principles of resolution we've talked about, but do you see there's a problem? That is, you have a direct or hidden fifth. Now, this is a perfect fifth, and this is a diminished fifth. So it's not a parallel fifth, but is a part writing error which does weaken the counterpoint. And we want to avoid it in outer voices, so if the A were in the bass, it would be even more egregious, easy to hear between soprano and bass. But we're also going to avoid it in the top 2 voices. Aldwell Schachter shows lots of examples along that line. So that top diminished fifth going to a perfect fifth is going to the perfect fifth in the same direction. Therefore, direct fifths, they're directly going to a fifth. Aldwell Schachter calls them hidden fifths. That's fine. Right, hidden fifths, they're exactly the same. Okay, so how to get around this problem? There are several solutions. The simplest thing would be simply to remember this pitch is variable in its resolution. Just move it up, like so. And that does double the third. All right, and there's nothing wrong with that. But if that produces an effect which you think is not as solid as having, say, a doubling the root, there are other ways of solving it. And the simplest thing would be to simply flip the upper 2 notes. You can see, just invert them. And now they can go directly by step. This produces a direct perfect fourth, which is considered perfectly all right. It doesn't weaken the counterpoint at all. So that would be a solution where the root is now double. So keep that in mind as you're doing your homework. All right. Now, since this harmony divides the octave equally into minor thirds, like so, let's think about this in abstraction. And simply transpose, this would be the 7 diminished 7 in C. Of course, it would target that pitch. So let's take it up now a minor third, transposing it by one of the intervals contained in the subdivision of the octave into minor thirds. That would be D, F, stack of minor thirds, A flat, and a minor third above A flat is C flat, right? All right. And that would target E flat major, E flat minor, but that would push to E flat. But notice it contains exactly the same pitches enharmonically as this. Right? They're equivalent enharmonically. Let's continue up. Let's take the F now and move it up. F, A flat, C flat, and the minor third above C flat would be E double flat. And that would want to point to the G flat. So that's now G flat. G flat minor is a pretty bizarre key, but maybe enharmonically you could think of it as targeting F sharp and respell it as it being E sharp and so forth. But it contains the same pitches, just simply enharmonically spelled. Up another minor third. I'm going to respell the A flat now as a G sharp. Simplifies matters. So a stack of minor thirds produces the same exact sonority, but now centered about A, major or minor, 7 diminished 7 in A. So there's lots of enharmonic duplication in this harmony. So how many actual fully diminished sonorities are there, removing all the enharmonic equivalents? Let's see. See how these ambiguities might be exploited in modulation? All right. So let's take this basic harmony. We're thinking out of the context of a particular key center. We're just looking at how many transpositions we can achieve of this particular sonority. Let's take it up a semitone. C, E flat, G flat, and what would be the minor third above G flat? You said B double flat, you'd be right. Okay. Let's take it up one more semitone. Based on C sharp now, E, G, now B flat, completes it. Take it up another semitone, D, F, A flat, C flat. Well, there's that harmony we just looked at, in fact. You see they're the same. So there's only 3 possible transpositions of this harmony. There are only 3 versions of this chord outside the context of enharmonic spellings. All right. So it's a 4-pitch chord. There's 4 notes in it that symmetrically divide the octave. There's only 3 versions that are distinct from each other. That equals all 12 tones. Does that make sense? And you see in these 3 chords every single semitone possible. You see it? B, C, C sharp, D, E flat, E natural, so forth. Moving up the ladder of semitones, you get all 12 covered. All right. So this makes it subject to many reinterpretations, and possibilities for modulation are quite extraordinary. All right. And let me show you some of those options. Much more on modulation later in the course. And let's take that starting harmony, the fully diminished 7 chord. Fully diminished because the 7th is a diminished 7th. If it were a minor 7th, and this is the way you'd see this chord in major, we would call it half diminished, put a little slash through the 0. That means that everything is minor thirds, except the top one is major third, the 7th is a minor 7th, and the symmetrical structure is broken. That's fairly common in a major key. All right. Now we mentioned before the relationship to this chord and the dominant requires the conversion of only 1 pitch down to that G. You see that makes the 5/7 chord, 5/6/5 in this case. See? Okay. Let's take it again. Instead of lowering the top note, remember they're all symmetrical, so out of context, out of musical context, if you just hear that chord alone, you have no idea how any of these pitches would resolve. Let's do this same game, but instead of taking the top note here, let's take the bottom note and lower it. So that converts it into an entirely different dominant. This would be the 5/7 in the key of E flat, right? Let's hear that. So first off, we did this. But now listen, same chord. Right? It changes its meaning entirely when you drop it into the musical context. Now you can continue this process of starting with this chord and lowering one of the pitches, and you'll get a different dominant each time. I won't demonstrate that, but you can try that at the keyboard. It's very interesting. All right, so this opens up some new possibilities for multiple meaning and modulation, and we'll make reference to that in the future. I did want to show you one thing about a particular inversion, and that's the 4-2. Go back to C minor, let's say, since we're looking at that as the starting point. Let's put this chord, remember the chord we're talking about is this. Let's put the A flat, the 7th of the chord, in the bass. Now we know how that resolves, right? Going to push down to the G, correct? Now, if that happens, you're ending up with a 6-4, right? It's going to be the 5th of a C minor chord. And you know that a 6-4 that has the pitches of the tonic doesn't function like a tonic, it's unstable. So this harmony almost always, this inversion of the 7 diminished 7 chord, with the 7th of the bass, the 4-2, resolves to a cadential 6-4, which is functioning as the dominant. It might move on to the tonic, or maybe it's a half cadence. That's a special case. There's examples in the text that you can refer to. All right, very good. Now, parallel to our discussion of important topics regarding chromatic harmony and the like, and voice leading, from Aldwell Schachter, we'll be looking at large-scale compositions in this class. In your previous study, you've looked at shorter examples, but now we're looking at larger examples, entire movements possibly, maybe even entire works. So if you would take out the Burckhardt anthology, we'll begin looking at the first composition along this line, and that is Beethoven Sonata No. 1 in F minor, Opus 2, No. 1, his first piano sonata, written as a young man in 1795. Well, he was nearly 25 when he began working on this piece. It's dedicated to Joseph Haydn, Franz Joseph Haydn, who was about a half generation older than Beethoven. In fact, at the top of the Urtext score, it says Joseph Haydn gewidmet, dedicated to Joseph Haydn. And it reflects a kind of pure classic aesthetic. So it's a great place to start with Beethoven. These are his roots in classicism. And even in this early piece, you can hear Beethoven's style beginning to generate. We'll look at another more advanced Beethoven piano sonata coming up, the Waldstein, which is a remarkably innovative work and a real milestone in his career, and an important work to understand the evolution of the music in the 19th century. So on Elms, you'll find questions for discussion on this piece. Make sure you have those in front of you. Today we're going to look at just the first 4 questions on this handout. First question, discuss the work's form. What are the most important section boundaries of the piece? How are the sections defined? What is the role that each section plays in the overall scheme of the piece? Actually, we can talk about the first 3 questions nested together in one big overarching question. What is the basic tonal plan of the work? That's question 2. And the third question, what is meant by the term sonata form? Does it apply readily to this work? All right, so we're going to get an overview of the piece and its overall form. In the next session, we'll look at some of the details, questions 5 through 8. Focus in on particular important and very interesting details in the work. Let's begin by hearing the first movement. This is a recording by a Hungarian pianist, Jenő Jandó. Jenő Jandó. Beautiful performance. Very nice, sharp. All right, very good. Let's look at the overview of this piece. The formal boundaries of the work are quite clear, and that's typical of Beethoven. Indeed, it is a sonata form, right? It uses sonata form. So you probably know the basic sections in a sonata. There's, of course, an exposition. And this is in two sections, two subsections. Group 1, or theme group 1, and group 2. And typically, these would be in the tonic key, and then the contrasting group 2 would be in the dominant key. Or if you're in a minor mode like this, the relative, which is the case here. So in this piece, F minor and A flat major are the two contrasting key areas. And they're fairly stable within each of these keys. There's a modulatory pattern, obviously, that's needed to move to the second key. And then there's the development section. That follows. So this frequently repeats. In classic sonata, it would repeat. The whole exposition would repeat. All right, development. Now, what is the development? Is it where the themes in the exposition are developed? Not necessarily. Maybe it would, maybe not. The development section, this is a kind of a misnomer, really, in English. In German, it's called Durchführung, which means the led through section. And that's what really happens in a development. The themes, or theme, is led through many different tonal regions. So it's a tonal journey. It contrasts the stability of the exposition being in two specific key areas. It moves through several. So it gives a kind of searching quality to the development that makes it stand out from the exposition. And the next section, which is, of course, recapitulation. Right, and the recapitulation brings back the materials of the exposition. So you have group or theme, group 1, and then 2, but in the original key. In this case, it's going to be F minor and F minor. It's not going to be a secondary key to which it modulates. Too close, in the classical mind, too close to the end of the piece to be experimenting with a new tonal region, right? That changes. Okay. And there may be an additional coda or something to bring the piece to a satisfying conclusion. In this piece, we have a very tiny little codetta, I guess you would call it, that ends the piece. Just a few measures that are added to the end, which are not found in the exposition. At the end of the exposition, they're found only in the recap. We'll call it a coda or a codetta, small coda. Coda means, from Latin, is from tail, via Italian. Cauda, coda, tail. The tail of the piece. All right, now where do these section boundaries occur? Well, measure 1. Okay. And the second group is measure 20. All right, measure 20. Take a look at measure 20. You can see there's a textural change. This is very typical of Beethoven. The subsections in Beethoven's work, sonatas, are always very clear. There's a textural change. You can see the opening of the music has a arpeggiation going up. And if you look at measure 20, 21, and following, you see the right hand has an arpeggiation going down. And then it's built on a pedal. And the pedal at 20 and following, you see is an E flat being held in the left hand for a long time, right? That's a dominant pedal. Now, the two contrasting thematic ideas are very easy to determine where they are tonally because of these particular features. The first theme is an arpeggiation of the tonic. So you know you're in F minor because you can see the arpeggiation of the tonic. And at 20 and 21, the second theme group is built on a dominant pedal. See, the opposites also, not just in terms of register and direction, but also in terms of function, tonic versus dominant. All right. So the development begins Beethoven's being extremely polite here, giving you a double bar. It's a major 49. Can't miss that, can you? Okay, and if you turn a few pages, the initial materials come back. Do you see it? At 101. Okay, that's the opening materials, minus the pickup, but you can see everything else follows suit. There are a few tiny changes. Second group, even if you didn't read music, you could see that it looks blacker there in the left hand. 119, there's a textural change. Measure 119. And the added materials, at the very end, just the last few measures, that's easy to see. All right, very good. So we've talked a bit about the overall shape of the piece, how it does conform to a classical sonata. Also we looked at the materials in first and second group. Next time we'll proceed further into this piece. Now the homework assignment, which is due Monday, is a handout. Again, look at ELMS. Incidentally, all the written assignments are due on Mondays. Get them to me back on ELMS in the form of a PDF. It's a handout. In this case, you'll find it as a PDF on ELMS. And you can print it out if you have a printer and fill it in. Take a shot of it with your smartphone, or if you have a scanner, you can scan it and send it back to me in the form of a PDF. All right? If you don't have a printer, you can write it out. It's not hard. There's just a handful of notes. Write it out on manuscript paper and fill it out. Now here are the instructions. It's quite clear at the top, but I'll put some flesh on it for you. There's a dozen examples. Note that they're all in minor. They're all in the minor mode. None of them are in major. You're to fill them out in SATB form. So you have a given soprano, harmonize it in SATB. And you know what that means, of course. Use at least one leading tone diminished seventh chord in each example. There are some that you could use more, but at least one. And supply functional symbols, Roman numerals and the bass. So that's due Monday. All right, we'll talk more about it on Thursday. Take a look at it if you have questions at our Thursday Zoom meeting. We'll talk more about it. All right, until then, I'll see you. Take care. Have a great day.